everyone. Welcome to the Book Over, our little book club where we talk about books, especially ones that give us book hangovers. I'm Sarah, and with me is Megan. And today we have a special guest, Angel Lawson, who's an author that we love. Hi, Angel.
Hello.
Thank you for coming and talking with us today. I know I'm really excited. I actually have like a list of things I want to talk to you about.
All right, I'm ready.
But really what I wanted to say is you're the first RH author that I read, and you were so good at it that I didn't even realize I was reading RH or what that was. And I actually ended up Googling it because it was like, this is an RH on it. And I was like, what does that even mean? But it was like, I was telling Megan, and I mentioned this in a previous episode where I was like, it was just so good because I'm reading, it was Wayward Sons.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And it, I'm reading it and I'm like, well, I like this guy. And then, I'm like, I like this guy. I like this other guy. I'm like, I want her to be with all of them. And then, I was like, wait, is that what's going to happen?
It was like magic.
Yes.
For once in your life, you didn't have to choose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So started my Why Choose career of loving those books. Yeah.
Right. It never stops. I think it's like people start them and like they just, if they're into it, they just kind of can't get out of that. And I don't actually read a huge amount of RH, just kind of personally, but I recently read a book, that Inheritance Game series. Have you heard of that? It's Jennifer Barnes, and it's like a traditionally published, and it's like a young adult novel. It's sort of like Knives Out, and but there's 4 brothers, and you're like, this, what is happening? Like, why are we not all? Why is this not a reverse harem? Like, it doesn't make any sense. It like, because they, yeah. Mm-hmm.
It is really hard now once you read reverse harem to go back if you have a book where there's multiple love interests, right, and there's the potential is so great, you're like, but why choose? Yeah. It does make it a little harder to read traditional books.
It really does. Yeah.
You're just the whole time you're like, what a missed opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Missed opportunity.
There is a missed opportunity. I've like wondered if I thought to some authors, I'm like, I wonder if they could like rewrite the series, like do like a multiverse kind of parallel universe. Like if they
I had one that was really a love triangle and series, and which I don't usually write, but I really did. Like she really had to pick one of these people, sort of, and I have thought a million times over, if I had been writing reverse harem at the time, it would have ended very differently. It would have been a totally different book. Yeah.
Oh wow. Right. Have you ever thought of like taking it and like doing like a little like novella or something of like parallel?
It's really long. It's like a really long sort of dystopian, like 6-book series. And I think it would be
too
really
much.
Complicated. Yeah, I think it'd be too hard. Yeah.
I gotcha.
But it really would have been very different. Just I don't know.
How did you get into reverse harem? How did you hear about it? What made you start writing it?
So I had just finished that series, which is called the Death Fields. It's the girl who shot first is the first one, and H1 is like the girl who's something, and it's sort of like viral, like a virus pandemic-y type thing. It's I guess more post-apocalyptic than dystopian, and I had finished that, and I've always been a chronic genre jumper, which is not awesome. But I was like, I don't know really what I want to work on next. I just wasn't sure. And a friend of mine, y'all may have read her, LJ Swallow. She writes like the paranormal, like the 4 Horsemen, and some Academy. They're all more like urban fantasy, paranormal. And we were just talking, we had been friends for a while, and she said, I've been watching this genre called reverse harem, And I was like, what are you talking about? What is this? And the same as everyone else. I was like, I don't know what this is. And this is in 2017. And so I kind of started looking around at these books because she mentioned it, and there were not that many. There were like a couple of sort of like authors doing well, and it was just interesting. And I read a couple and I was like, this is really interesting. And the truth is that this is when y'all are going to be like, Angel is crazy. So I had this story percolating in my head for a long time because I, for years and years and years, had 5 crows that followed me around in real life. So I had 5 crows, and they followed me around every time I walked in my yard. They would like swoop in the yard and they would sit in the trees, and I would take a walk and they would like follow me on the walk. And it was sort of noted in my family that this was a thing. And then one day I was leaving my house and there was this crow invasion in my yard. And long story short, one of my cats injured one of the 5 crows. And it had an injured arm, and I had to get the cat in, and then the crows were like trying to scare away the cat with this they were like swoop down. They weren't doing anything. They were just like swooping. They were protecting they were protecting their crow. And we managed to get the crow up in a tree. And I think ultimately it probably didn't make it because it was injured. And then from that day on, the crows never, ever, ever came into our yard ever again. They were gone. And the really, really weird thing is that like months later, I started kind of having like more success with my books and like better things happening in my life. And I was like, oh my God, those crows were like stealing my mojo. Like I always thought the crows were my friends. And then I realized that I think my cat was scaring them away because they were actually evil. And not maybe evil, but like not my friends.
Yeah.
So anyway, for years and years, I had these crows, and I would sort of be like, I really need to make up a story about these crows that follow me everywhere, but there's 5 crows. And how do you write a romance with 5 things, like 5 crows and 1 person? And then as soon as I understood what reverse harem was, I said that I can write this story. And that's when I wrote Raven Queen's Harem, because that's what that was. Anyway, that's my very long story about how I got
I love it.
And
how it sounds very fated. It sounds very fated that it was all meant to be.
Yes. And it totally just like clicked. It clicked with me. My favorite part of romance novels is the like falling in love. And I'm like, you get to do that over and over in these books, like, and it can really drag out and not just be in the first book. You can do series, like, because sometimes romance is hard to write in series because you have to mess everything up.
Yeah.
Keep it going. And that's a lot of like drama. It's not totally my thing. And so anyway, it just like clicked with me. I don't know. I was like, this is exactly what I need to be writing. And sometimes I still write like some male female things. I don't mind it. And but yeah, it was just weird. So yeah, that's what happened. Me and my crows broke up. Sad story.
It was a
so
toxic
in the book, one of the characters has no arm because he lost his arm in the battle. And
that's awesome. I love it. I love it.
Wow. That's a very cool story. Well, because you definitely are like one of the first, reverse harem authors, and especially one that is very long lasting. And you keep changing it up. You've gone from, PNR to the contemporaries that are a little like, a little more YA to Lords, which is just like, super dark.
Yes.
So how did that happen?
So that happened. So Sam and I have known each other for about over 10 years. mostly online, like online friends. And she's been my cover designer from the very beginning. And we're very, very good friends. But she mostly was, and she writes, but she mostly sort of wrote in like fandom stuff or just for herself. Like she wasn't really, really writing. She had a couple things for like online for sale, but not a lot. It wasn't what she did. She mostly was doing the cover designs and had a lot of clientele with that, and mostly in like gay male romance, and then me, and then so I in like right before the pandemic, I was just really burned out. I had just been working too hard and just stuff was going on, and I was like, I'm just gonna write. I had this idea to write the first Preston Prep series book, which was male female, just as sort of like to do something different, because I was just feeling like I just didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I wrote it, and I wanted it to be darker. It was dark, but it was not super dark. And I've always had like wayward sons. They're all like foster kids and they have these rough backgrounds. And the Sparrowwood Academy, they're juvenile delinquent. I love a juvenile delinquent. I used to be a social worker who worked with juvenile delinquents, so I love juvenile delinquents, which these juveniles are nothing like the ones I write about. And mine are all in jail, and we're all in jail. Oh, wow. So I had that angsty thing, and I liked pushing it. And to be completely honest, I didn't really understand. I wrote Sparrowwood, but I didn't really understand bully. I didn't understand bully romance. I just couldn't wrap my head around it. And, like some people at the beginning were kind of like judgmental about it. And I'm like, I'm not judging it. I just don't understand how this works. So like in Sparrowwood, the bullies are outside the harem, and that I could get, but I couldn't understand how you go from there. But then I read a book that was kind of a bully, more like enemies to lovers. And I'm like, okay, it's enemies to lovers like on crack. Like it's really a very traditional. I had to like kind of wrap my head around the trope. And once I kind of realized it was enemies to lovers, but really extreme, like almost like alternate reality, because this doesn't really functionally exist in society. It's not, that is an abusive, horrible relationship that we would tell all of our friends to get out of, right? So once I kind of reached this alternate reality concept of it, I'm like, okay, I understand this better. So I wrote this Devil May Care like really very fast. I was very motivated, but I knew I wasn't quite as gritty as I wanted it. And Sam is a very gritty writer, and we really understand the level of darkness that we're going for, which is usually like all about being really awful and like really awful things. Like, because that was one of my things, is that I would read the bully books and I would say, I don't understand, this person is not really that mean. Like, why are they not mean? I couldn't understand any of this. And then when it clicked, so I just approached her and I said, I wrote this book and I really, really think you could make it better. And she was like, oh my gosh, are you asking me to write this book with you? And I was like, that is what I'm asking you. And she was like, I'm in. And then we wrote that, and then it just sort of went crazy from there. And so at some point, I think I brought it. Well, we were just sort of talking about like another thing to do, and somehow reverse harem got brought up. I don't know if I brought it up or she brought it up. It was probably me, but she was like, yeah, I'm ready to do it. I just didn't know if she had any interest, because, she had never written it before. And so that's just sort of how that happened. But we, like I said, I don't really read a huge amount in the genre that I'm writing. A lot of people do, but I just don't. But everything that I would kind of like look at, I'm like, I don't understand it. These people need to be so much more terrible. So basically, if we decided if we were going to write it, it was going to be as absolutely awful as it possibly could be. And that's how it got to there with the darkness. So,
The Sam pushes the darkness, makes it grittier.
she is definitely like, we'll come up with the idea together, but she definitely sort of has like sort of literally like the vocabulary and language to get us over the hump that sometimes I have a harder time like really I don't know, I get really caught up in the plot, and she gets really caught up in the characters. And so sometimes when I'm caught up in the plot, I'm like, I don't know how to get this character emotion going on. So this is why this is our collaboration, is that like I am super heavy on the plotting and she is super heavy on the characters, which is why I knew that if she helped me with that one, is what I wanted her to do, was to help me bring those characters to the next level, if that makes sense.
It does. I love that. And I think that's why all of those books work so well.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So
well, one more question about that. So I noticed well, kind of. So in the Thistle Cove series, you had the sugar babies. Did you intentionally bring that over to Lords? Like, how did that?
The Thistle Cove books just didn't sell very well. And they're like my favorite, but they just didn't sell very well, and they kind of need a new packaging, and Sam and I have talked about that and stuff, but yeah, sometimes, I mean, like I definitely sometimes repurpose ideas that I want to like refine, you know. And so y'all, some of it, this is the craziest thing, some of the weirder things that seem really extreme. I have a 20-year-old daughter who is super, honestly, genuinely super sweet. She's in a sorority, but it is not like wild and crazy stuff. It's just not. She's just not that kid. Like, I think it's kind of strange, but she's not that kid. Like, she works on Friday nights and gets off at midnight and then goes and picks up all her friends and then is the designated driver and drives them home.
That's awesome.
But she will tell me these like little gossips and stories about the things that happen. And I am literally like, note to self, this is a terrible thing that fraternity boys do, you know, and you don't really have to make so then it's just exaggerated. It's just exaggerated inside inside that story. I don't remember exactly what your question. Oh, you say this was so yeah, the sugar baby thing. It's a thing. I'm so sort of, not only is it a thing, but even when she was in high school, she would say like, oh, you know, these girls have like a sugar daddy. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, they go to like a nice school, like nice, like, you know, and like, oh yeah, they have, and I'm like, this is not acceptable, but they sort of think this stuff is really common, things that we would think are really not.
Yeah, so that's coming from stories from your daughter from real life. Wow. But
and then I listened to like a ton of true crime, and so I'll sort of like, when things start popping up, you know, so like I'll listen to like Dateline podcasts, and there'll be like a Dateline where this college student is murdered by her sugar daddy, and then she'll say, oh yeah, this person has a sugar daddy, and I'm like, okay, this is a thing. It's not a stretch. So it's so if that makes sense, like it's definitely repurposed sometimes if it doesn't get an effect that I want in one book, because this Little Cove just didn't do quite as well as I wanted, and so I was like, well, I'm just gonna read kind of
well, it's a really interesting concept. I didn't know if it was connecting worlds or if it was just that it was such an interesting concept and there's so much you can do with it.
Yeah, I sent Sam this article that I like maybe saw on Reddit after we wrote it, and it was like stepdad is arrested for sending for stalking stepdaughter for years and sending underwear to her house in the mail anonymously as a stalker. True story.
Oh my
Wow.
You do not have to make this up. You don't have to, and we had made it up. And then I saw this and I said, oh my God, every time I think that like what we're writing is crazy, it's not crazy.
No.
Mm.
Maybe that's why it resonates so much, because you don't, I mean, to a point you used to suspend disbelief, but then again, you do kind of believe it because you do hear these things on Dateline and stuff these days.
Oh yeah, well that like case in, I'm from Georgia, that case in South Carolina with the Murtaughs. Do y'all know them?
I don't know if I've heard
that. It's this
one.
like huge scandal right now. It's like made national news for sure. And it's like this family who has run sort of the like prosecutor's office in this area for like 100 years. And over the last 6 months, like basically this one dad and then his sons who were like college age have like 5 deaths under their hands. They have massive embezzlements. They have been manipulating the cops to get rid of this. And these are like just these lawyers, small town lawyers. And so when you're like Daniel Payne in the Lords, this is ridiculous. He could never exist. This is
what he could.
He could, yeah.
He could.
So you really, and again, that whole thing came out like this summer. We'd already written it. And so I don't know. I just sort of like I listen to a lot of true crime. And so sometimes I'm just like, all of this is, the pieces are all here. You just have to make it entertaining, you know? Yeah.
I think that there's a great balance between the stories and the characters, and the way you guys are able to redeem them and make us, I mean, even from book 1, you still like them.
Yeah, how we can like them so much still and have a like Megan and I have talked about who our favorites are.
Both Tristan for
yes, and you know, but like just certain things they do too, you know, like it's just like it's very well, it's like, you know, it's a good, well written story when you can go through the emotions and you can still love these characters even though they do horrible things or weird things, or the, you know, just like Killer and the night waking her up, not even waking her up, like just, you know, like the, you know, I was just, you know, just like all that stuff. You're just like, like I told Megan, it makes you kind of question yourself on how much you enjoyed that story, but then you're like, that's fine.
Sam and I call it traumance, traumatic romance.
There we go.
We keep trying to get that word to click, but it caught on.
We need to make it happen.
We need to make it happen because it's a thing where it's like the trauma creates the romance is inside that trauma. Yeah.
I like it though. That I think that's that genre describes one of my what I like.
It's like sure. Definitely a thing. And so we try to like this is why I knew this, like when we first started working together, like we like a lot of the same books or TV shows or movies or whatever, and we have always sort of like been drawn to the terrible person who's been redeemed or whatever, and or sometimes it's just like in books we've read, and so sometimes when we're trying to like convey, I don't know if this is like revealing secrets, it's not like author secrets, but sometimes just to try to convey like I'll say to her, like, do you know that episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer when Spike does this one thing? He says this one word, and then this and this and this happens. And she'll be like, yes. Or it'll be vice versa. She'll say the same thing to me. And it could be like, do you remember this episode of New Girl and blah, 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 blah happens. And so it could be like horrible or it could be like funny, you know, or whatever. and we'll pick that like one tiny moment, and then we try to create our own moment around that emotion that we felt watching it, and be like, this is what we're trying to create.
Oh, I love that.
So yeah, I mean, cool. That is how we get our inspiration.
Well, and Spike's a great, I mean, I feel like he's one of the original, for me personally, I think he's how I discovered my enemies to lovers, like villain.
Right. Yeah, he's the best. And he's so like petulant, you know, and like, and he's entitled, and he's like a baby, you know, and he's like, yeah. So it's awesome. Yeah.
He's great. Oh, I could go on. I won't go on about it, but
the best heroes are really not one-dimensional. You know, they've got a lot of, well, you know, like, so Sam and I go way back to like Twilight stuff, and like we love Edward Cullen because he's just kind of the worst, you know.
Yes,
but he's so compelling, and it's like, why? And then and so we'll just like go down these things of like, why is this so? Like,
why would you like somebody who creates a robot version or like a blow doll of them? Because
they love them so much.
Exactly. That they make a robot.
That's so funny, because we haven't talked about that, but we have one of our characters in the Duke series coming up. He's actually like, he would make a robot of the main character, just to have that person. Yeah, that's so funny. I have to tell her we talked about that.
If that pops up, I will be the happiest girl in the whole world.
Yeah. But it's that sort of love. Like it was so wrong, but even Buffy was sort of like, oh my God, this is how much you're obsessed with me, is that you made a robot. This is disgusting. But I guess
kind of sweet.
You know, she says it and like that. So there's I rewatched it like last year. There's like the one episode where like Riley comes back and he's like the Mission Impossible guy, and he comes back and Spike is the one selling the eggs, the demon eggs, and this is what they're whole looking. Then she finds out it's him, and she's like, you know, I'm not surprised that you did this, because this is what you do. This is who you are. Yeah. And that's the thing about bad guys, is this who they are, and you kind of love them because they just can't help but be awful,
right?
Then maybe if they don't want to, because he had a demon in him, so he couldn't help it. But
I mean, well, and I won't go too much into Buffy, but I will say, I mean, the guy, you know, Angel got his soul taken, and Spike tried to get his soul back,
right?
So while he was evil. So okay, I'll stop with the Buffy stuff. I'm sorry.
Talking about villains, you know, there's like such a lot I've seen out there about villains. Is like the thing about a villain, you know, like you have like the prince, and the prince is whatever. But you know, the villain though has, you know, when he loves something, he's gonna fight for that thing, and he's gonna fight hard and dirty for it.
Right.
You know, so it's like he's not going to do the proper thing. He's going to do what he needs to do for that person that he loves, be it his friends, be it the girl, whatever. And that's what I love about the villains, is like, yeah, they might not be this upstanding citizen. They might have, you know, these devilish things about them, but, you know, they're the ones that are going to, like they say, like set the world on fire for you.
Right.
And that's like, I mean, how good does that feel? Like, think of that. Like, you know, it's like, well, I mean, I don't, but you know,
we all really want that.
Yeah. You want the beast to fight for you in beast form. Yeah. There might be a prince inside, but you have to get through all the beast. Yeah. And then that's like with so when we wrote Lords, you know, they're awful. And then everyone was like, well, they better redeem themselves in book 2. And we were like, no, it's not going to happen. They're going to be worse. And that is something that, like, I think is not super usual, which I do think is why it, so just from like a weird author side, like it's very unusual to have like better reviews on book 2 than on book 1. Super unusual. People usually review book 1 and then hopefully go on to review book, but if you go and look, it's like they always just go down, and it's fine. But our book 2 has the highest reviews, and it's really unusual. And then the momentum towards book 3 was really, really high. Like, I personally don't ever know if I'll experience that sort of like passion about a book series by readers. But I think that's what it is that, you know, the readers were like, this is what we want redemption. And we were like, no, that is not what you're going to get. Like, you're not getting what you think you want at all. And we just pushed it like even more.
But I like that.
Yeah.
So, because, you know, there's so many times I've been reading books and I'm like, you know, the formula, like I start to know this formula. I'll look at the percentage on my Kindle, be like, okay, now it's going to be the twist, and now it's going to be that. And it's like, I like it when you don't follow that formula, because that's what makes it entertainment, especially people like Megan and I who read so much.
Right.
You know, it's like, it takes a lot to get us surprised and stuff. And then what I like too is the ending. Like, you know, and I know some people were like meh about it, but like, I love their ending, and I love, I don't know, you'll see, we have an episode on the whole series coming up, and we were talking about, you know, how like we loved how Tristan knew she was pregnant. We loved it, you know, and how she did it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love that. I loved all that, you know, they finally got what they needed. That they needed to be the family. They needed that. And I completely just loved how it like wrapped up like that. I thought that was great. And we don't see that a lot in RH, where they, you know,
And
we felt like the reader, the really like readers that had stuck through it deserved some goodness, because we had dragged everybody through the mud for like 30,000, like 300,000 words, you know, or 400,000. So we were, and so I know there are some people that are like, I don't know why that was so long. It went on so long. And I'm like, well, you read 400,000 words. I don't really know why an extra like 20 is breaking the bank here, you know, like it. Yeah. And I do. And there's a couple of people who probably thought they were like a little too nice at the end, but
it made sense.
They needed to get there though. After everything, you got to look at the whole story, right?
Yeah.
I think it made sense with you know, the time jump, and then just where they were. And I love that you gave us well, spoiler, but we usually talk spoilers. The pregnancy, I think a lot of us liked that, and especially in reverse harem, we look for that, and that so often isn't there. There's a lot of people against it. It always seems like they're like, oh, you don't need to have a baby to have a happily ever after. So a lot of times we don't get that anymore. But I think, you know, people really were interested in the princes and that whole trope, and I think there is like a big need. So it was really cool to have. It wasn't just like a quick, like, you know, chapter epilogue about it. It like felt like we were there for the journey and the ride, and it just felt like the perfect way to end.
And the thing is that it is a time jump. So the next series starts concurrent with the story. So you will see these guys and the lords in here, and they don't have kids yet. They're not like they're still in sort of like, Killian is trying to figure out how to be his dad, you know. And I mean, and they're not the central focus, but they are there. And as these other royal families are sort of working out their drama, he's like, well, you know, that's like the whole thing with like the girl. It's like his property, and then these other people are coming in, and then he's got to figure out what to do with literally a girl who is still property. So he hasn't changed. Does that make sense? He's not like females aren't property. It's just story is his property. That's all he cares about.
It's just to her. It's literally just for her.
And she earned her autonomy by being loyal and saving, you know what I mean? Like they don't just love her. She's part of their basically their gang, you know.
Yeah, she's one of them.
Yeah.
That's going to be very interesting to see, you know, to see them in that story. I loved the well, I don't know if they're Easter eggs or more of, you know, just the little bits of Duke's coming. Like I had a feeling when we started like hearing that story, the Duke in the last book. I had a feeling, and then I saw the announcement. I was like, yes, I knew it. I'm really excited.
So the Dukes are next, and then I think it's going to be the princes. We were not like, the crazy thing is we were really, this is going to sound ridiculous, but when we first did Lords, we were trying to decide immediately sort of like who we were going to work in, and we were really into doing the princes, but it felt so like such a crazy story, you know. And now we're like, okay, I think everyone would have been ready for it. Like we would have primed you for it, but we felt like we almost needed one more series in between to prime people for this basically breeding storyline. I don't know. Like we wrote out like a whole outline, and it was like really where we were going, and then I was like, oh, is this just too much? Probably wouldn't have. I don't know. People, you know.
Well, the breeding. I think the breeding kink is starting to come around, especially in PNR. So maybe like by the time it'll be, you know, ready.
Yeah, that's what we kind of, and we were like, you know, and I am this way. I don't always like babies, and I don't mind a baby in the epilogue. I don't want to read a book. I don't want to read a book. Y'all will never get a baby books from me or Sam. We are not super into babies and kids and books, other than this breeding thing. But so yeah, I think I was like, I don't know, maybe there's just like a whole group of people though that would be like hard pass, you know. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, I guess we'll see.
We will see. I
know. I think us fans of the series are excited for it. Like especially the way it's set up.
It's gonna be like so crazy. We're gonna have to like roll it back. I know. And Sam is really excited about Barons. Like I don't know. It might be like we might be doing this for like 5 years. We'll see. I don't know how. I can't even I'm not one of those people that has like a master plan like years out. So I don't even know how that works. So we'll see. Talk to me like
I hope we get them all. I really do. They're also interesting. Blood.
Yeah. I'm for the whole world. I'm excited. Okay. You want to give us the whole world each one? Like I'm down.
I think it's gonna really build. I'm really excited. We're both getting really excited as we dig into this new one. And like it's been a lot of really fleshing out this because it's really part of this bigger world. And then creating their smaller world inside of it. So it's been interesting.
So you've been saying you don't read a lot of like RH. So what do you like to read?
I am like a tried and true, basically like young adult reader. And I do read other things, but I think that like YA romance, and it can be mostly contemporary, but it can also not be. It's real easy for me, and it's sort of where I go to like deep. I don't know. It's easy. It's like you were saying, like the tropes are really predictable and whatever. I think sometimes just like having a lot of chaos in life. And writing these chaos books, I'm just like, I just want to read about some kids doing some fun stuff. Now there's a lot that are kind of like, it's my jam. They're like true crimey. They've got like a little true crimey trope going on where they're serial killers and they're trying to solve this, or they're doing a podcast or something. It's like a whole thing. And it's like that series, like One of Us Is Lying, that just had a TV show. I had read that a long time ago. So I kind of like that mystery angle. So I know that's not super exciting. Like I should definitely read, but I'll read things like Court of Thorns and Roses, and I love Glass Castle, but I read really slow because I don't allow myself to read during the day because I'm supposed to be working, and I read at night and then I'm tired. So I read, but I read really, really slow.
Me too.
Mostly because I'm tired and I just go to bed.
I know.
So if I read something like a big series like Court of Thorns and Roses or something, it'll take me like 6 months to get through all these books, you know, and yeah.
That's because you're writing books, so that makes sense.
Yes, and I'm really not allowed to read. I'm not allowed to read. I don't read or watch TV during the day. Like,
oh wow, okay, it's work time.
I might be messing around on Facebook, you know, and I read a lot of art. I do read like a lot of article. I'm just a reader. I read like long form articles. You give me a good long form article and I'm kind of a nerd. It's and then somebody is like, read this article about health and nutrition. And I'm like, I will actually read that. Or celebrity, like whatever. And it's like, oh, here's a celebrity blog. And I'm like on the celebrity. Yeah, I have like 2 celebrity blogs I read. But that's like, again, where I just get all my thing. Like I read about, that's where I get a lot of the ideas I get are from like articles and first person narration. Like there's a lot of those online, like where people are like, it happened to me type things.
Yeah.
I'm like, tell me more about your life in the cult.
Yeah, exactly.
I read a lot of stuff about cults. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it sounds very research. So it's research. You can't. So
it's just
work.
Yeah, you give me a good article about cults or serial killers, and I'm all in.
Speaking of cults, you have a new book coming out
in
January.
I do. Yes, and it's about
we're very excited for it. That was a surprise to see that announcement. I'm very
excited. I have been working on that since like before or during writing Lords, the first book. Like while Sam was working on her stuff, I was working on that, and I just kind of spent time in and out last year. And it's so funny because I'm like kind of working on like the hard edit stuff right now, and I'm like, I feel like I have to write this disclaimer, this backwards disclaimer that's like, this is not as dark. It's not
non-trigger warning.
It's a little dark. I mean, it does have some dark elements to it, but it's nowhere near the same because it's just this I've been wanting to write this book for like years, and I never could fit it in. And then last year I was like, I'm just gonna write it. So we'll see how it goes. I like it. Sometimes I just have weird books that I like to write, and it
sounds really good. From the little bit that we have so far.
Yeah, I'm like upset. Like next, it's sort of like Nexium. Do y'all know about Nexium? It's the one that
familiar.
Nexium is this one in upstate New York where the guy just got sentenced to like 200 years for sex trafficking and whatever's. It's basically like a multi-level marketing, but a cult.
Okay.
Yeah. And the girl from Allison Mack from Smallville.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? That she played the the newspaper person.
Oh, that one? It's that.
Yeah, so she's in jail.
About that, yes. Oh,
yeah, she's in jail. So that was sort of my it's like a non-religious. It's not religious. It's like
that was really
mindset.
Crazy from what I heard. I mean, I heard about it some years ago, I think, and I was really like, how did that happen to her?
Yeah, I've been like working on this idea for a long time, and then that Nexium stuff hit, and I was like, this is sort of this was talking about how I get like this gelled it because it wasn't a religious cult, and I didn't want to write about a religion. I wanted to write about just like the manipulations, you know, and the brainwashing side, you know. Yeah. So
that sounds very interesting. Very excited for that.
If people are wondering, it's that kind of cult.
Okay.
Which is
I was wondering. Now that makes sense. I knew I had heard that Nexium before.
So for somebody who is new to you,
Yes.
What would you recommend for them to read first? Like a brand new reader of Angels.
Maybe like, I think like Sparrowwood is a good in-between spot, because then you could either go backwards to the more YA stuff, but it still has the bullying-ish type things, or you could go onward to like Lords of Pain if you want. And then Thistle Cove still I really like too. It's I know that's my ode to Riverdale, because I love Riverdale. Yes, that is my ode to Riverdale. I'm just inspired by like things, and I love the insanity of this like alternate reality of the content, because I feel like these are all like alternate. Doesn't that make sense? Like these all feel like alternate realities, because they're not that people aren't in poly relationships, but they're not in these like harem relationships or whatever. So they're almost slightly like out of reality focus, which makes them really awesome though, because you can almost do anything within certain parameters inside of that. So yeah. I may be the only one that feels that way, but that's just kind of how I think
I think that describes it really well.
Yeah.
Well, and that's something that I've told like Megan, like what I like about like paranormal and stuff is because like anything can happen. So like an RH and a paranormal is great, because it's like you don't have to be like, well, this isn't normal, or this isn't, it's like anything can go, because it's a different universe. So it's like when it's something like that, I'm like, go for it. I like that.
Yeah,
it's entertainment, it's entertaining, and it helps us like escape from day-to-day life. That's why we read, right?
I think to like all the like really extreme like Yellowstone or Sons of Anarchy, or these like twisted mafia-esque crime, like I'm always like, Yellowstone is just like Sons of Anarchy on a ranch, like in Montana. And so it sounds bananas, but it's like a great idea. Like people love that. They love these family hierarchies and everything, but they are real, but they're really not fun. Like you wouldn't want to really be involved in that.
No, I don't think I have the grit to
like I'm tired.
Maybe in the book world, definitely not the real world.
Not in the real world.
It was like a book. I don't know. Motorcycle clubs sound kind of fun though. Maybe they're not. I thought about it.
I love Sons of Anarchy, but it was like it wore me out. It was emotionally exhausting.
Anyway, I think there was we kind of touched on it, but it was I wanted to ask not just reverse harem, but how you got into indie like becoming an indie author in general, because I know you started out before Kindle Unlimited was like hitting it big, and there were all these
I published my first book, and it will be 10 years in February. And I had written it a year before, and I've just always been a creative person. I also still very narrowed down, but I like teach art classes, and I owned like an art studio where we taught classes and for kids and camps and stuff. And I had that for a long time, until 2017. And so I was kind of doing both. And then my partner and I closed for unrelated reasons, but it was also right around when my books were really starting. I kind of started treating it more as a career and then a side. And so it kind of worked. But so I've always been creative. And done like artistic type things, and I'm definitely an entrepreneur. I've owned several businesses, and I mean like brick and mortar businesses, since I was in my early 20s. It's like a compulsion. And so this was like the one that finally like clicked, where I could be creative and have this business, and it's independent. Like I could work really just for myself and on my own time. And I'm not like the best at the marketing and a lot of things. Like I'm really not great at ads and stuff like that. But I knew I'm a finisher, and I knew once I started something, I would finish it. And when I got into Reverse Harem, there were unfinished stories, books. And because there were a lot of young authors. And the one thing I said to myself then is, the one thing I know about myself is that I can be jumping into this new weird foreign land of reverse harem, which at the time was like super just out there, no one thought it was going to last. They thought it was like a super flash in the pan. It's just a money grab or whatever. And I was like, the one thing I can do is finish a book. And I don't know what all these other people are going to do, but I can finish a book. And that doesn't go back to your question, but that's sort of part of that. So because I had written a bunch of books, and none of them really did that great, but I was like chasing ideas, and there was no organization about it. A lot of that was not available at the time. We didn't understand algorithms and how Amazon worked. I mean, there was not a lot of Facebook groups back then, and people definitely weren't in the sharing mindset. They were sort of like scarcity. Like, I can't tell you how my book did well, because that if you do well, it might hurt me. And then at some point along the way, there were some people who kind of stepped out and were like, guess what? Readers, there's never enough books. So we can help one another. Like, yes, I'll tell you how I did this or whatever. And that was very helpful to me, because I did have this business mindset and I like to learn. I listened to like a ton of podcasts, and read a lot of nonfiction books. And so I always have really liked that. And so that's a crazy way of just saying, I don't know. It's been a really weird, long journey. It's been a really, really, if you had told me this is where I would be in 10 years, I would not have thought this is where I would be.
Right. Yeah.
So it sounds like it started out with not a lot of community, and then it's like the community for not only just readers, but for authors kind of built itself along the way. And that's what really kind of propelled you, is what I'm getting from that.
Yes. And people, I know that like just being committed is not enough to find success, but there's, for me, sometimes it has to be said to me in a very specific way. Like, someone can tell me, like, this is how you whatever, like, cook this is how you cook pasta. This is how you cook pasta. And I could do it wrong every single time. And then someone will like say, talk to me like I am 5 years old. Like, I love the people that talk to me like I am 5 years old, and they explain it. And then I'm like, oh, I understand. And that's how the book business is for me. It's sort of like what I was saying about not understanding bully romance. Like, it took me a really long time to understand that. But once I understand it, I usually can then propel that into something. I don't know. It doesn't have to necessarily be success. Like, sometimes it's just for me, like it's like a personal challenge.
Yeah.
So yes, and there was definitely not a lot of community, I don't think, at the beginning. And the thing I will say about Reverse Harem is the reader community is like nothing else. It is it was such a like relief because I wrote this Heron Queen, the Raven Queen, and I had kind of been in the groups because they were so energetic even then, and maybe even more so. And I was so shocked at the enthusiasm the excitement by the readers, and it's never gone away. I mean, sometimes people aren't into certain books, and that's totally fine. It's just sort of what it is. But even a reverse harem book that maybe doesn't sell well probably sells better than another book in another genre, because the readers are so ravenous and they're so enthusiastic. Does that make sense? And
I definitely know that, we're definitely the most passionate fan.
Yeah, and I love and we as authors like love that, because all you want to know is that someone's reading your book. That's really all you want to know, is that someone's reading your book. And they let you know. You don't have to question if someone's reading your book. And you usually can kind of figure out maybe like where things went wrong. Sometimes you can't tell where things went wrong because the readers are really nice too, and they're not going to tell you bad things. So you're like, somebody please tell me what's wrong. But yeah, it's definitely I think it's a fun genre to write in. Some people get very stressed out about it, but I just think it's fun. I don't know. I've been on the other end of it. I've been on the other end where like it's like screaming into the void, like there's no one around. I don't know. So I think this is just pretty awesome. Like there's always somebody around. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and I love reverse harem because, it's multiple love stories in one, and then it is such a great community. And there is something to be said about finishing books, especially in the early days, because there's unfortunately so many from like 2017 that never were finished. So thank you for finishing your.
I'm telling you, I knew it. I was like, these people are not all going to finish these books because they're new. And starting a book sometimes is a lot easier than finish. Like I don't have that problem, but I know other people have that problem, and I really tried to use that to my benefit.
I think that is pretty huge. I mean, to this day there's still people asking about certain books from back then, and we're like, I don't think it's gonna happen. It's been quite a while.
It's been a while.
That was
it's hard. It's hard to figure all that out, and a lot of times it's that like rush of adrenaline. You're like getting this information out.
Well, I'm so glad that you've stuck with it, and we have whether you're writing reverse harem or MF or whatever, where both of us are huge fans of all of your work. So
thank you for writing.
You're welcome.
Thank you. 10 years ago. Thank you for past you.
Both enjoy all your books so much. So thank you for being here. Oh my God, it was so fun to talk to you, and I like to figure out your process, and also that you love all the good shows. It makes sense why I love your book.
I love all the garbage shows. Give me a garbage show and I'm there. So
they're good garbage. It's good garbage.
It is good.
Garbage.
It is
the more dramatic, the better. The crazier, the better.
Yeah.
I love it.
Awesome.
All right.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
And we look forward to your new releases coming in January and February. That's gonna be exciting. Yeah, that's gonna be exciting.
I was finally like, I have to just put this out there. I have to do this, and so I just did it. So
it is on my calendar. I cannot wait for it. I'm very excited.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for listening in. And we will see you next time on the Book Over. Bye.